Thank you for auditing Professor Skye's record review, where I normally talk about new music, but I'm on vacation. I'm going to be on vacation for a couple weeks, few weeks. And, I might do some videos out there, but I might not. And I want to give myself some time to, still upload videos, but not my usual new music stuff. It's going to be a long time, and I shouldn't leave you without some dope thoughts to sleeve to. So what I'm going to do today is pretty weird and pretty special. So first of all, some context. This is going to be what I call a time capsule video. Okay, so I've basically just finished cleaning out my father's house. He passed in February, and he had a lot of very interesting objects. Some of the objects were mine, some of the objects were given to me, some of the objects were his, and I inherited a whole bunch of different stuff. But this is a very odd object, which is filled with buttons, and it's actually a time capsule from around 1986. See, if you didn't know, in the 1980s, there was a global phenomenon, okay? Especially in England and in France, and to a lesser extent in America, where people went crazy for buttons, sometimes called pins, sometimes called badges. Okay, I think here we called them buttons. In England, I think they called them badges, and then in French, they call them pins. And, you see it a little bit. I think there's a character in Pretty in Pink who wears a lot of buttons. You see it a little bit, but it's not quite in the big sort of traditional image of the cool, happening 80s. Of course, the reality of the 80s was terrible, filled with injustice and crime and Reagan. But still, there was some fun stuff culturally. And the idea that teenagers would go and would buy many, many, many pins and wear those pins was a pretty interesting teenager rite of identification. You wanted to show who you were and what you cared about, right? And that's still what we do, with band shirts and I suppose with avatars and things of that sort. But pins are a very concrete, actual way to say, I like the Cars. I like Joan Jett. So what is this object here? In the middle of the town where I grew up in a town that was voted the most boring town in Massachusetts, Belmont, Massachusetts. There was a toy store and a music store and a video store. I don't remember what it was called. I believe it was Belmont Toys and Video, but it could have been Belmont Music and Toys. It could have been a whole series of things. It was eventually chased out of town by a local chain of video stores called Videosmith, which is one of my favorite places to go, which itself was chased out by Blockbuster Video, which was in Cambridge nearby, which itself was chased out by streaming. So this was a very cool little store. I talked to my brother about it recently. It turns out Ringo Starr's wife, Barbara Bach, had some connection to Belmont. So Ringo Starr was in that store at some point. But it was this cool little haven of just sort of hippy-dippy cool stuff. I remember buying my first cassette tape there, Never Let Me Down by David Bowie. I did a whole video about that album. I remember begging my father to buy the movie Short Circuit. And I think we did. I don't even think it was, because it used to be that videos were either, no, I don't think we bought it, but it was $80 because that was the price for rental videos. Most videos weren't priced for sale, they were priced for rental. Anyway, and when they went out of business, my father, who had a very good sense for these things, saw this object, which his sons always loved to look at. All of these great buttons on this little rotating pin board, And he just said, I want it. How much for it? The whole thing. I don't know how much he paid. I assume it was not more than $20. Maybe it was $50. Who knows? My dad was generous. Maybe he paid $100. Unlikely. But what that means is, this is essentially an unmolested relic from the mid-80s. Some buttons have been taken off and given away to friends over the years. A few buttons have been added here or there. You'll see those. But for the most part, this is a perfect depiction of what kind of buttons would be in a hip music store in 1987. So let's go to Capone's vault, okay? We are going to look at not every one of these buttons, but at most of these buttons, okay? No, come on. Why is that? Okay, sorry, that's my weird button thing. If I get copyright struck because of that, I'll be very upset. I'll explain to you the story of that some other time. But okay, so let's look at these buttons. So first of all, it says up top, buttons. Very informative. Nice plexiglass case they have here. Have a little lever. Let's just take a little tour of what was popular in the 80s. All right. So up there, we see a pretty sweet Aladdin Sane video. All right. One Def Leppard, many Def Leppard. We got a Queen button. I gave one of those Queen buttons to my daughter because I accidentally gave her a button once that said queer. And her teachers didn't know what that meant. I thought it said Queen. That appears to be Eddie Van Halen. That's going to be a pretty common theme, Van Halen. Kinks 1983 tour, that's a cool one. Ted Nugent, that's a little less cool. Culture Club, true story. I was obsessed with the Culture Club when I was younger. Ooh, a Talking Heads button. That's a pretty cool one. What was that? Remain in Light. I think that's either Eddie Van Halen or Jeff Beck. I can't tell. A bunch of Rush buttons as well. There's Devo, a personal favorite of mine. Look at this one right here. That's a Keith Richards Tattoo You button. This is ABC. I don't even know what that is. This is Scorpions. In case you're a German and you very much like the rock and the roll and you want to rock me like my name's Skye. There's Hall & Oates. Can't go for that. Look at this Pretenders button. Look at the colors on that one, right? Look at that little tiny cool button. A weird political button, Buck the System. We'll see a couple more like that as we go on. Night Ranger. I don't know who these guys are. They look like some dreamboats. I think that's Elvis. Ooh, another Pretenders. Here we got Spock and Kirk right next to Frank Zappa and his Valley Girl. You know, I mean, come on. How much cooler can you get than those black and white? Here we have a very nice Jimi Hendrix enamel button. Boy, I must have bought that later because that's much nicer than the other buttons. There's a black and white Grateful Dead poster. Button. There's a Santana. There's another Grateful Dead, multicolor. Van Halen. Look at David Lee Roth staring out at you like the lion that he was. Pat Benatar. I think the No Nukes was one of my my parents because they were super against nuclear power and nuclear weapons. One of those makes sense to be really against. This is one which you might not be able to tell, but this is a homemade button. I made this button. It's a Boston Bruins button. Ooh, here's Paul from Yellow Submarine. I did a video about the Yellow Submarine, so maybe you saw that. Look at this Zeppelin button. Oh my God, I've never even seen this one before. It's a refraction grating Zeppelin button. What is that even a picture of? There's this guy. There's another Kirk. There's that Buck the System, another Culture Club, Rush 2112. I think that's another Rush button. Here's a button that I made myself. It says Impeach Santa because I learned what impeach meant when I was like 10 years old. And I said, well, we should impeach Santa. And my father thought that was very funny, so he made a sticker. Adam and the Ants, B-52s. I think those are the Go-Go's, the Cars. I don't know who that is. Genobia. Never heard of them. This is Ian Drury and the Blockheads. Roy! Let's see. There's Heaven 17 again. Def Leppard, Pyromania. I once got so mad at Def Leppard that my friend and I took a bunch of Def Leppard tapes, destroyed them with ski poles, and threw them into his backyard, making a kind of confetti to end his childhood love of Def Leppard. Rick Springfield, Working Class Dog. True story. If you look up on YouTube, Rick Springfield Star Wars interview, there's like a half-an-hour interview where I interview Rick Springfield only about his Star Wars collection. There's another Rush. There's the Go-Go's. There's Mick Jagger from Tattoo You. Ooh, there's a nice refraction grating Genesis. I'm not like the biggest Genesis fan, but that's a sweet button. These seem like these might have been added later, though there's a nice simple Kinks one. I don't think I pointed that out. This one's been curious to me. 1984. I suspect this is in recognition of the Eurythmics soundtrack to the movie 1984. And I'm sure that was made in 1984. This is a Mao pin that was not for sale. My father also was fascinated with Mao's propaganda and with Mao's poetry. So we have a lot of Mao memorabilia in our house. Now I have a lot of Mao memorabilia, so don't know what I'm going to do with that. I think that's David Lee Roth again, the Pretenders. Ooh, look at that Prince. Look at that Prince. Oh my God. Okay, the 80s were kind of cool. I think a couple of David Lee Roths, Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll, Soft Cell, and of course, look at the double Johnny Cougar. Double Johnny Cougar. Double Johnny Cougar. Double Johnny Cougar. We got Joan Jett again, Culture Club, Def Leppard. Is that Johnny Rotten? Is that supposed to be a PIL button? I don't know. If you know who these people are, you tell me. Another Rush pin, Judas Priest, Queen. Who is that? Oh, another Rush. This is added by my dad, I Go Pogo. There's our Laurel and Hardy. I don't know what this one is. This one I think was added by my dad as well. This is either a Ballantine beer can or a Led Zeppelin drummer pin. I don't know. Another Rush 2112. Beautiful Clash button. Rush. I think that's Peter Gabriel. Is that right? Ooh, another one of the great black and white Grateful Dead ones. You know, I did a Grateful Dead video as well. Shake It Up with the Cars. Oh, that's a sweet one, huh? Look at that, right next to Prince. You know, I'm not a fan of you know, just blindly loving the 80s and talking about how great the 80s were. But that is a good argument for the 80s. Prince on a motorcycle next to Shake It Up with the Cars. Another Cars out sticker, a button. We got Pretenders. We got another Van Halen, another Van Halen, another Van Halen. Lynyrd Skynyrd. Yikes. This is not my favorite band, but that's a cool diffraction grating. Def Leppard, Andy Warhol, Marilyn Monroe. That's my family crest. I don't know how that button made it on there. And then look at this one. Look at this Beatles one here. All You Need Is Love. Right? Isn't that sweet? Can I zoom in on this? Yeah, I guess I could. I just don't want it to be too shaky. Right behind Bob Dylan. What's this one hiding down here? Oh, yeah. Body by Budweiser. I don't know where that one came from. Oh, yeah, right next to Yes, Chenery 10. That was my middle school, and they had a vote to whether or not to renovate the school, and the vote didn't pass, and then within a year, it mysteriously burned to the ground and was rebuilt. Nothing suspicious there, said I, watching my middle school burn to the ground. It's actually quite cathartic. Same thing with this. I'm a stringer. I played cello, so that must have been added there. I Love Joan Jett. I don't know who that is. It looks like Bruce Springsteen and Ringo had a baby. Maybe you know who it is. I don't know who these folks are. There's a Red Sox pin. Another anti-nuke thing. Music makes winners. That was a slogan of our school. Ooh, there's a Hendrix pin. I can't believe that lasted. I probably would have taken that if I saw that in middle school. Anti-Izod. There's Beaver. There's a Beaver pin. Beaver from the TV show Leave It to Beaver. Ooh, a nice Sandinista Clash. Billy Idol. This was sort of before the rainbow became synonymous with gay rights. So a nice kind of Billy Idol rainbow thing. Beautiful Culture Club there. Is this Charles Manson? Looks like it. Captain Beefheart. Damn. How hardcore was my hometown? Wow, right above I Love Andy. That's Andy. Oh my God, the other Andrew Ridgely, the other member of Wham. Right above a Frank Zappa. Beautiful diffraction grating Frank Zappa. That Oxfam looks recent. It must have been added recently. And Back to the Dead, and Soft Cell, and Hall & Oates. Another Billy Idol. And there you go. So I don't know if that's interesting to you, but I find it to be pretty interesting. This is what was available for sale when a music store went out of business in 1986 or 1987. All right. Well, until next time, there's the camera. So the camera's somewhere over